Hello guys, Greg back with another video. So today I'm going to talk about the mainstream range, or the designer range, of men's fragrances from the house of Dior. Now I'm only going to talk about the ones that I own, which obviously means they're the ones that I think are the best. There will be some flankers that don't appear in this list, but most of the fragrances will be here. So believe it or not, it's actually been 10 years since Dior had a completely new men's designer release. There's been a lot of releases from the house, but they've all been flankers of other fragrances. So if you're not sure what a flanker is, basically it's an altered version of a current fragrance. It could be a sport version, or a parfum version, or a cologne version, and so on. But the last completely new release from Dior was actually Youre On in 2005. Now good news is there will be a new release in 2015, and that's going to be a completely new fragrance in its own right. Can't wait to see what they come up with. They've actually set the bar very high with what they've done so far. Okay, so let's start off. Let's have a look at what is probably the least known, or certainly the least talked about, men's designer release from the house. And this one is Youre On. So this was released in 1997. It's actually my most recent purchase from the house. Now lots of people say that this one smells like sand, which I guess is in keeping with the name Dune. I'm not sure that I get that from it. For me, it's very much a fig sandalwood fragrance. Not an earth-shattering fragrance for me, but very pleasant, and even as a lesser-known Dior fragrance, it stands out in quality to compared to the majority of releases from other designer houses. And if I was to rate Dune, I'd probably give it a 7.5 out of 10. So that's your first one, Youre On. So next we have a 2001 release, again not a particularly talked about one, and this one's called Higher. So, whereas Dune was all about fig, Higher is all about pear. It's a very fruity, woody, aromatic fragrance. It's got some peach in there as well as the pear. It's got some musk. It's spicy. It's actually quite short-lived on my skin, unfortunately, but it is really nice while it lasts. And if I was going to rate Higher, I would give Higher also a rating of 7.5 out of 10. So next up. Well, this one's really the holy grail, possibly my favourite fragrance of all time, and if you follow me, you'll know what's coming up. So this is the amazing Fahrenheit. So this one was released in 1988. You can see this bottle here is actually almost empty. Thankfully, I do have a few others. But yeah, I mean, released in 1988, miles ahead of its time, still current today. I haven't actually reviewed this fragrance. I will get round to reviewing it at some point, but I've talked about it a lot, and I've said it's like a greasy, oily petrol mixed with leather and mixed with musk and violet leaf. And for me, without any doubt at all, Fahrenheit is a 10 out of 10 fragrance. So, excuse me. Next up, one of the two flankers of Fahrenheit that I own. This is a 2009 release, and this one is called Fahrenheit Absolute. Really like the bottle here, the way it's got this darker feel to it here, which is in keeping with the fragrance actually. So this one was released as to mark the 21st birthday of the original Fahrenheit, and it's quite ballsy, as the original is actually, but this one sort of brings oud and incense into the composition. It does retain the DNA of the original. The main note in here with the incense and the oud is also violet. You could call this one Fahrenheit Noir, I guess. It's kind of the darker, edgier brother of Fahrenheit. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the sales of this one didn't go as expected, and this one's been confined to the vault, and it's already becoming really hard to find. So in terms of rating it, Fahrenheit Absolute is an 8 out of 10 for me. Next up, my second Fahrenheit flanker. This is the 2011 release, and this one is Aqua Fahrenheit. So this is the fresher, sort of warm weather offering from the line. Again, it retains that family DNA, but this one's dominated by grapefruit, which actually lasts for a long time on my skin. What you also get in here is you get some mint, you get some mandarin and orange, which really gives it that summer fresh feel. And if I was going to rate this one, I would rate Aqua Fahrenheit an 8.5 out of 10. Now there are some other Fahrenheit flankers that I don't have. There's a Fahrenheit Parfum, there's a Fahrenheit 32, and there's quite a lot of summer editions. And whilst they're good fragrances, they're just not good enough to make this list. Now on to the next line, and a fragrance that pushes Fahrenheit actually has been my all-time favourite fragrance. Originally released in 2005. This one is Dior On. I've actually got the latest version of this one, the 2011 reform. It's rare that I prefer reformulated versions, but I just find with Dior On that the reform is a more rounded fragrance for me personally. Now, as you'll probably know, this one is dominated by an iris note. It gives it that sort of powdery makeup type feel that people have spoken about before, and that's definitely true. It's backed up with a cocoa accord. It's got a great lavender note in there, which is something that people don't actually talk about with this fragrance, but it's definitely a really great part of it. And for me, again, this one is a perfect 10 out of 10. So now the first and, in my opinion, best flanker from the Dior Homme line. And this one is the very well-known Dior Homme Intense, or DHI. Originally released in 2007, reformulated again as Dior Homme was in 2011. So this is an EDP version of Dior Homme, but it's actually a different fragrance really. It's similar, but it's got subtle tweaks. So unlike with Dior Homme, I actually prefer the original version of Dior Homme Intense. So this version that I have here, this is a 2008 bottle, and as you can see, it's got the silver collar. The current version has a black collar on there, and that reform took place around September 2011. So this really is like a darker brother of Dior Homme. The iris remains in here, the cocoa remains in here, but there's a big dose of vanilla. There's a very smooth amber note in here as well, and it just adds a little bit different. So I always say this is the nighttime version of the two, and Dior Homme's for daytime. But to rate this one, the third fragrance from the Dior house that I rate as a perfect 10 out of 10. So next up, so if that was the darker, sort of deeper fragrance from the Dior Homme series, now we've got a lighter, fresh summer fragrance, and this one is Dior Homme Cologne. Now, there's two versions of this one, just to confuse. But in this case, the two versions are actually very different. So they're not. This one's not a reformulation; it's a completely different fragrance in its own right to the original 2007 version. The 2007 version is pretty redundant to me. It just smells like a watered-down Dior Homme. It's an iris-based fragrance. This 2013 version, this is a stunning, aromatic, fruity, floral, musky fragrance. It's all centered around an awesome bergamot note. I actually get a fleeting comparison to Serjoff Neo with this, the bergamot at the top of this fragrance. And if I was rating Dior Homme Cologne, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. So next, another flanker from the Dior Homme line, and it's not the last either. And this one is Dior Homme Sport. And again, this is the original 2008 version, and it's got a slightly different collar to the current version. And again, I prefer the 2008 version to the 2012 release. Now, I don't know why this one's called Sport. Much like Chanel's Allure Homme Sport, it's not a sports fragrance. It's a really classy, well-blended fragrance for almost any occasion. Now, this particular version, the 2008 version, is all about lemon, grapefruit and ginger, and it dries down to cedar, sandalwood and some vetiver in there. The 2012 version adds iris into the composition, which brings it more in line with the Dior Homme and Dior Homme Intense. It is a great fragrance as well, but it's just bringing it back to that iris and being a bit too close to the others, so that's why I prefer this one. And if I'm rating this Youre On Sport, I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. So now on to the last, and what I suspect and hope is the final release from the Dior Homme line. And this one is, to be honest, it's another completely out of the park superstar release. This one is Dior Homme Parfum. So this one's a 2014 release. No mistaking that this is the brother of Dior Homme and Dior Homme Intense. It's got that very prominent iris note in there. But whilst I would call the other two, call them iris fragrances, I would say this is a smoky leather fragrance with perhaps with an iris background would be a good way to describe it. Iris does start out as a prominent note in here, but it's soon overtaken by smoke and leather. Also oud. I get some rose in here and a lot of vanilla as well. And the base from this is stunning, and it's an unmistakably sandalwood base in here. Just another epic release really from the line. Excuse me, there's a lot more to this fragrance. I've done a full review on this and I'll leave a link in the video description so you can see if you want to find out a bit more. But Dior Homme Parfum, again, from me, gets a 9 out of 10. You have to bear in mind I'm actually quite critical and quite picky with my rankings of fragrances, so it tells you how good I believe these are, that these are all coming out at 9s and 10s with the exception of a couple. So now on to the final line of men's fragrances, and these are the Eau Sauvage line. Now the original Eau Sauvage came out in it was 1964 I believe, but it was relaunched and sort of repackaged in 2009. And here it is, and I'd say this is the quintessential gentleman's fragrance, a very mature gentleman vibe to it. It's an aromatic citrus fragrance, it's got woods, it's got spice. The dominant note in here is lemon, which lasts throughout the duration. Unfortunately, the fragrance doesn't last long for me, probably 3 or 4 hours. But it's such a good fragrance, such a classic fragrance, that I don't mind reapplying this. Some good reviews on YouTube if you want to find out a bit more detailed information on this one. But Eau Sauvage for me gets a 9 out of 10. So the penultimate fragrance, the very close brother to the original Eau Sauvage, and this one is called Eau Sauvage Fraîcheur Cure. Now this one was released in 2007, it's now discontinued and it's really hard to find now. Fraîcheur Cure means freshness of leather. Now this one, as I said, it is similar to the original, it's just got the addition of some leather and a small hint of amber. The leather in here is very light and fresh, which is strange to say for leather, but you understand what I mean if you smell this. Not at all animalic. Lemon's still by far the prominent note to my nose, and I actually think this is an improved version of the original. Absolutely beautiful fragrance, lots going on, and a 9.5 out of 10 for me. And so the final fragrance, and this one is Eau Sauvage Parfum. I did also own the Eau Sauvage Extreme, but I've since sold that. But so this one isn't just a parfum version of the original. It's actually a completely different fragrance to my nose. The strong lemon note has really subsided, and this one just is a big blast of myrrh. It's very balmy. It's got a smoky, grassy vetiver accord in there. It's got just some undertones of citrus. Now, as with the other Eau Sauvages, this is a mature scent for sure. I think this one is brilliant as a piece of, brilliantly crafted fragrance, a really great piece of work, but it just doesn't quite appeal to my tastes as much as the others ones do. So slightly scaled down marks. I'm giving Eau Sauvage Parfum an 8 out of 10. So there you go, guys. That's the end of another video. Thanks so much for watching as always. I hope you enjoyed that. Please give a thumbs up and leave a comment, and if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. And thanks again, and I'll see you all very soon with another video. Cheers.